Hi, I'm Tara Palmeri, back with a special episode with the legendary New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd. Whether you agree with her opinions or not, there's no doubt that she can pierce through the human psyche and bring power to its knees in a way that few writers can. This episode is about her latest book, Notorious, where she profiles people with power and how they use it. This includes everyone from Elon Musk to Peter Thiel to Jane Fonda and Uma Thurman. The person, though, hanging over all of this, of course, is President Trump. And Maureen gets into how her views of him have evolved since she started covering him as a presidential candidate in 2016. We also talk about the Democratic governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, and whether she's cooked after she was found hiding behind a folder in the Oval Office. Maureen has some thoughts on who can lead the Democratic Party out of the wilderness and who might make a formidable presidential candidate. Someone in Hollywood, you might be surprised. And of course, as with all things Maureen, there's a lot of Shakespeare in this episode. It's a fun one, so stick around. Maureen, thanks so much for joining the show. This is a treat for me, and I'm sure for my listeners. You've long been an inspiration to me as a journalist because you are such a great observer of character. You just have this ability to pierce through the psychology of people. And I have admired you for being fearless, always calling out powerful people. They tend to be men, but like you're also very feminine while brutal. Like your latest
I like
stabbing
that.
of your latest stabbing of Trump in the biggest job in the world. Trump seems like a very small man. That was in her latest column, your latest column in the Times.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Tara. You know, you're one of my favorites. I'm always happy when I see you, when I get to Madison Square Garden for the big Trump rally and you're there. I know I'm in the right place.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was a crazy one. Yeah, so I've been digging into your book, Notorious, since I got it last week at your book party. And, I'm a political junkie. So obviously, I went straight to the Elon Musk profile from 2017, which is so fascinating because of the evolution of Musk and who he
Yeah.
is right now. Also, Peter Thiel. Of course, I had to read the Uma Thurman profile and the many others. Yeah, so one of the profiles in your book is on Elon Musk from 2017, which is so fascinating because at the time he thought he was a humanitarian. He was trying to save the world from climate change. He was like intensely almost paranoid about AI. And he's just such a different person now. Like, what an evolution. What do you think happened in between that time?
Well, that's a crazy arc. He has not changed his opinion about being the advocate for humanity against runaway AI. He would feel the same. But it is funny because in that 2017 piece, he was the one who was going to protect us against the existential threat of AI. And then he came to Washington and became the existential threat. He himself
Mm,
was the
yeah,
threat to the life of Washington. So that's a crazy arc. But
yeah.
also on CNN the other night, Bernie Sanders did a town hall with Anderson Cooper, and he was saying, Elon Musk is going to come in with his AI and his robots and replace all working people. So he was presenting him as an existential threat on the automation of the American workplace. So
Yeah.
Elon is like at the center of several existential threats. In that piece, it was so funny because the reason he wanted to go to Mars was in case AI became, killer and went after
Mm.
us, that we would have a place to escape. And he always said he wanted to die on Mars, just not on impact. But but
Yeah.
in the course of reporting that, I found out that the guy who's in charge of AI at Google, Demis Hassabis, just started laughing when Elon Musk told him that that's why he wanted to go to Mars. And he said, "But Elon, AI can follow us to Mars. It's in the
Yeah.
air." And Elon was like, "What?" So he's a genius, but as you've seen in his work in Washington, he also has a naive side.
Right. And he also just gave X, like X AI. So now AI can go through all the conversations on X and become even more powerful. So for something he's
Right.
so afraid
Well,
of, he's certainly making it more powerful.
Yeah, I think when I was doing that reporting where I drove around Silicon Valley and talked to everyone who was important in AI was probably in its toddler years. And now I think it's probably in its teenage years. And
Mm,
then when it gets to be an adult, it will start replicating itself faster and smarter. And then we're kind of cooked. So then we might go back to seeing Elon as a hero if AI
interesting.
turns on us and he saves us.
Huh.
But
Huh.
that's a little while away.
How would Elon save us?
Well, let's see. That's complicated because the reason he formed OpenAI with Sam Altman was so that they could kind of watch what the other AI companies were doing and try to get a kill switch so that if everything went wrong, they would be able to save us. But because so much time has passed, I think maybe we've passed the point where you can have a kill switch. So he would just have to save us by being on our side because Steve Wozniak and all these other guys think when AI becomes fully sentient that we're going to be the family pets. Steve Wozniak said he's
Mm,
actually
yeah,
feeding
right.
his dog filet mignon because he now sympathizes with the dog because that's what he's going to be when AI takes over, when there are
That was a
over.
great line in the
Yeah.
profile. Yeah, that really was quite fitting. Yeah, I mean that is if Elon Musk decides we're deserving of a kill switch. Um, he may hate us all
Well,
so much by then.
I don't know. I still think if anyone it saves us, it'll be Elon because all these other tech guys, including Sam Altman, and that's the whole basis of the legal feud they're in, seem to be focused on the money. And
Mm.
not that Elon isn't, but at least at one point in his career, he seemed to care about carbon-based beings. So we'll see.
Yeah, not doesn't really care if they have Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security, but sure.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
just that we're alive.
What condition? Who cares? Um, Trump 2.0 is certainly very different than Trump 1.0. It's
Yeah,
accelerated. You write about
there's
it so,
more gold in the Oval Office, right?
so much more. What did you call it this week? Oh my God, you killed me. It was something about like a casino
Oh, Caesar's Palace.
yeah, Caesar's Palace on the
I mean,
Potomac.
every time he has a world leader, today he had El Salvador in the Oval Office, and there's more. He has 7 gold urns and gold leaf across the mantle. And he took down there used to be an ivy plant that Kennedy had put there and that had survived all the presidents. So that got thrown out and
Oh,
7 gold
jeez.
urns are there and the gold cupids in the alcoves. And then he's actually started work on the ceiling to put in 2 chandeliers and it's really shocking. It's really looks horrible.
Gaudy. Yeah.
Yeah, it
When
looks
I
so
remember
gaudy.
I'd been a foreign correspondent and I returned right in time for Trump's first term. And I had been, to Versailles and all these beautiful castles all over Europe. And I felt like Mar-a-Lago was a poor man's Versailles. And I just felt like I felt like it was so tacky and gilded and just like in all the
Yeah.
ways that like an American who really hasn't spent much time in Europe would think that's how royalty lives.
Yeah, who
It
called
was culture
somebody
shock.
yeah, someone said Trump's decorating style is like Louis the 14th on acid. Um,
You sure that
but
wasn't you? Because that was a good one.
no, I wish. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of incomprehensible how he has messed up that office. It's shocking.
How have your views of Trump evolved since 2016?
Yeah, I never was that worried that democracy would be hurt. I just thought everyone was getting a little hysterical about that because I think our democracy is really strong. But I did begin to worry when the Doge wolf pack began either sneaking into agencies or bringing muscle to get into agencies and getting access to taxpayers sensitive information without any prior sort of agreements in place or non-disclosure. I mean, that really shocked me. I'm a native
Mm.
Washingtonian. I was born there, and I just could not believe that they could get into the computers and get all this sensitive information without ever, sitting down and having to sign things or
Mm.
get parameters on what they could look at or what they couldn't look
And
at.
literally just
So
like busting into buildings.
yeah, exactly. And Trump, I think what's shocked me the most is I always thought the saving grace of Trump was that he wasn't a super hawk. He didn't want to invade places just to show his swagger. He always seemed more interested in building a hotel on the North Korean
Mm.
beach or, so I thought, well, that's good because it would be a total disaster if he was a super hawk. But now he's gotten much more imperialistic and acquisitive, and he wants to get Greenland one way or another, and he wants
Mm.
Canada, and he wants Kennedy Center, and he wants
He's thinking about
DC.
his legacy. That's what he's thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm saying he didn't have that imperialistic quality where he wanted to acquire things like
Yeah.
other countries. And so that's really surprised me.
Yeah. I think he was doubtful of his win in 2016. Like people around him privately said that even he couldn't believe that he'd won. And I think this time around, he feels like he has such a mandate that he can do whatever he wants. Um, at least that's my
Yeah, I don't
impression.
even know. I never know what people are talking about when they talk about mandates because if you win the presidency, you can do what you want. Like once W was the president, he took us into a misbegotten war. Like
Right.
it doesn't matter if you win by one vote or if you don't
Right.
win, you know,
Hmm.
you you can do what you want. Once they're president, they can do what they want with
Yeah.
us.
I guess to
And
them, it's a win. It's a win.
yeah,
Yeah.
and in my experience, and this is why I focus more on the person, oftentimes they're doing the opposite of what they promised in the campaign. So Trump promised to bring down prices, but the only prices he has brought down are stock prices.
It's true. And he seems so engaged in foreign wars and also Doge. Like, that was not a big facet of the campaign. You barely heard him talking about reducing the size
No,
of government or the
it
budget.
just came out of nowhere. They remind me of like Greek gods, their behavior is so capricious and cruel.
Mm,
People often ask me if Trump is like a Shakespearean character, but I think he's more like a cross between P.T. Barnum and Zeus, just hurling thunderbolts and taking revenge and making
yeah.
humans shapeshift. And I don't know, yeah, he's definitely high on his own supply. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought he would drop the whole victim thing once he got into the office, but he hasn't.
No, he likes that thing. Well, the most telling thing he ever said to me was once I was interviewing him and when he was running in 2016, and I said, I knew you for 20 or 30 years when you were a New York kind of Bella Figura. He was like this larger than life Macy's Day Balloon character in New York. And you never seem this dark. And now you're saying you like violence at your rallies, and you
Mm,
seem a lot darker to me. And why did you get so dark? And he actually thought about it for a minute and he said, I guess because it got me to number one, and I want to
mm.
stay at number one, so I'm going to keep doing it. And I
How,
think
yeah.
that that explains a lot about him. It's like there are no real principles except tariffs. I guess that's a lifelong principle. But
Yeah.
it's more like what his father said to him. There are winners and there are losers or zeros. And he doesn't want to be a zero. So he has to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, my "I'm your retribution" is working. But again, I don't think Doge cuts are going to make his base happy, especially if they
No.
try to make a call to Social Security and they don't have anyone on their line, or they see,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When that trickles down and they can't get their Social Security, or they can't, you know, they closed the local Veterans Administration office, and measles, like, go rampant. I think Trump will have problems. But I checked in with my Trump voting brother and sister this week
I
just
was
to
gonna
see,
ask you about
because,
that.
yeah, because I thought once it was affecting their 401ks, they might have some doubts. But they were both very calm about it. And my sister said, I really like what he's doing on the border, and I really like what he's doing on biological men and women's sports. And I think I'm going to give him some time on the tariffs. Like, she likes the idea of the tariffs. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been applied chaotically, but Trump voters just look at things completely differently.
And they also don't
So,
like to admit regret. Like I was gonna ask you about your dad. I know your father was a cop. My dad's an
yeah.
electrician and Trump voter. My brother's a Trump voter too. And like I was talking to my mom because I can't even bear to get on the phone with them because they'll just start screaming at me. But for I don't even know what. But I was like, is daddy concerned? Because he's, obviously like retired at this point about Social Security. And she was like, if he was, he wouldn't mention it to me because it's a sense
Oh,
of pride to be
right.
supporting Trump. And so to show any sort of regret would be an admission of like fault or guilt because, he's wearing like a MAGA hat around or he's so in it that he won't even turn on Fox News, which he thinks is too liberal. So
Right, and
I
that
think,
that is, yeah, Tara, that is the fault of the Democrats, because they treated the working class with such disdain for so
yeah.
long. Basket of deplorables. Every
Hmm.
nominee they had was kind of a hall monitor type, and
Yeah.
that went on for a long time. So it isn't just going to disappear in an instant. I mean, the Democrats are really going to have to work hard, to get beyond all of that avalanche of disdain that the working class felt from them.
I think the only people who probably are even close to doing that though are Bernie and AOC. So as much as the establishment like hates them and they're in this reflexive stance looking at their polling and looking at their focus groups trying to figure out how do we win back voters, like the people who are just going with their gut and going out there right now on their fight the oligarch tour, like I think that's probably the most persuasive message that the Democrats have right now because they're going after people that the left and the right hated for so long. Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. Like, I don't know. I think, not saying that I necessarily agree with them, but I think that they're probably more in touch with a message that could win back working class voters if Democrats can ever win them back than anyone
Yeah, I love Bernie Sanders. I can't help it. I just think he just makes me laugh. One time when he was running for president, I interviewed him, and it happened to be Valentine's Day. So I just said to him, "Did you get your wife a Valentine's present?" And he bit my head off. He was so mad. He goes, "What does that have to do with healthcare?"
Oh my God,
So
he takes
then
himself
the
so
next time I got an
seriously.
interview with him, I just asked him questions about whether he was team Britney Spears, and, you
I
know,
love it.
I just
So
asked
good.
him stuff that would drive him nuts. But he was on Caitlin Collins the other night, and she asked him some uh relevant question, and he started yelling at her, "Caitlin, that's media stuff." He's just
Always
he's
lecturing.
just he's so but he's kind of a pure spirit. I like it.
Yeah, it never breaks character.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That is who
Yeah,
he is.
at least he wants to help. You don't feel disdain from him. He really wants to
No.
help working people.
There was definitely a nexus between Trump voters and Bernie voters in 2016. And I even saw it in
Yeah.
my own family with my dad being like sort of intrigued by Bernie of all the
Yeah.
people. And I was like, whoa, is this really happening? Is this a real phenomenon where you could see someone who listens to like, well, when Rush Limbaugh was alive, like Rush Limbaugh and,
Yeah. Yeah.
Hannity and Combs, and he could see something in common with Bernie. So yeah,
Well,
there's
he's
something there.
authentic, whether you agree with him or not. He's an
Totally.
authentic. I went over to his wife and I said, "So, how old is that suit he's wearing?" And she goes, "Oh, I think We got him that at Macy's 20 years ago. You know?
Oh, oh, Bernie.
So,
Uh,
yeah,
so
Bernie.
is there anyone in the party that you're like, oh, that person is the phoenix, like they are the Obama rising up
I don't
right
know. You
now?
know, it's interesting because in this book, Notorious, I did what I'm choosing people who have intense magnetism because it gives them a lot of power, and then I'm interested in how they use that power. Do they use it gracefully? Or do they become jerks? You know, and
Hmm.
some people in the book become jerks and some use it gracefully. But Obama, I the minute I met him in 2007, I went on the road with him because he had movie star magnetism,
Hmm.
that burned through the screen magnetism, and I wanted to see that power. It was like a Shakespearean drama. Could the young prince usurp the queen, Hillary? You know, it was fascinating to watch
Hmm.
him. But then once he got to be president, he kind of never used his magnetism again. You know, you very rarely saw him smile. He
Hmm.
didn't use any powers of persuasion. I had dinner recently with John Boehner, and he was saying he would, Obama would call to lecture him about something, and Boehner would go have a cigarette on the balcony and come back and pick the phone up, and Obama would still be lecturing. Like he
Yeah.
didn't seem to realize that politics is the art of persuading people to do something they don't want to do. You can't just tell them the right thing to do and then expect them to follow along. So that
Right.
it turned out Obama didn't like politics. So his early magnetism did not take him as far as it could have. But there's a debate now because of Kamala having Beyonce and all the celebrities. Like, should Democrats stay away from celebrities because it makes them seem more elitist? Or you could say that if you've got a Trump, a P.T. Barnum type, do you have to fight a showman with a showman?
Yeah.
I mean, how how would someone like Chris Murphy, who's very earnest and serious and smart, go up against a showman? Maybe Americans have just gotten addicted to having someone with some degree of showmanship.
I think this whole like authenticity, even the podcast revolution, like reality, Trump was ushered in by the reality TV revolution. You thought you knew everything about him because you were following him everywhere in his life, at work. You saw him from one perspective of strength and you thought that was who he was. I do think perhaps like the podcast revolution will usher in more of a cultural figure that, who knows, could have a podcast, like a sort of Stephen A. Smith, Joe Rogan type. I know like Steve Bannon has a podcast, Gavin Newsom's trying to have one. Like people clearly see this as a very intimate, I guess you could call it like medium to talk to people. You're in their ears, you're sitting with them, you're understanding their worldview. I could see this sort of ushering in a cultural figure who maybe has like a prominent podcast, maybe.
Well, it's interesting because the one Shakespearean figure that Trump has shares some traits with is Richard III, because Richard III
Mm,
is a villain, but he comes up to the stage and he talks to the people in the audience and he confides in them and he says, "Here's the bad thing I'm going to do now, and
right.
I'm letting you guys in on it." And he uses humor so that the audience, as the play goes along, kind of gets on his side. And Democrats never
Mm.
like to admit that Trump's humor was effective. They would get furious if you talked
Yes,
about
he's very
Trump's humor, right?
right.
But it counters the authoritarian thing because people think, oh, he's not an authoritarian. Look at the way he's decorating the Oval Office. He's
Right,
like
right.
Liberace. He's not like Mussolini. So,
He's dancing around, listening to
one
cats.
kind of counters the other.
Right.
Yeah. But who do you think? I mean, who do you think
I don't
could
know.
make?
I really think it's probably going to be a cultural figure. I think it's not any of the people that we know, unless the people that we know of can create a persona that's bigger than their standing where they are now, if they are political, because I do think that there is like an anti-party movement happening right now, especially after like the Democratic Party for so many years has created kind of like undemocratic processes for picking candidates. I
Right.
don't think Trump represented the
Yeah, Bernie
Republican Party.
Sanders suffered from that, right?
Exactly. And
They
like Kamala
snatched it
Harris,
from him.
they were exactly. And so I do think that because of that, Trump created the Republican Party is the Trump party. The person who's going to win for the Democratic Party, which is a such low approval rating, is probably someone who's going to create the Democratic Party in their own vision, and have a following that doesn't need to rely on the party establishment. I mean, that's what I think right now, and I'm just predicting, but I don't see how else they win.
Yeah, I interviewed George Clooney for one of these New York Times profiles, like I have in the book recently, for this Edward R. Murrow play he's doing, and the interview lasted 5 hours. So finally, I'm like, "Well, would you want to run for president?" And he said no, but he didn't say it that convincingly, you know. But I don't know. I think that Democrats always do best when they have someone who's charming and who has some charisma, like JFK or Obama
Mm.
or even, Bill Clinton at the beginning.
But
Um,
someone you don't know a lot about, which is best.
yeah. I mean, I think Democrats are going to kind of score in celebrity at their own cost because I just think Trump has raised an appetite in people for having like a showman, a little bit of a showman, you know. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be as much as him, and it could be someone, you know, who was a showman with integrity. But I mean,
Mm.
I think people now want to be entertained with their politics.
Yeah. Gretchen Whitmer, big mistake
Oh
this
my
past week.
gosh. Yeah, why did she do that? That was
I don't
so
know.
Wha
Do you
I
think she's
mean,
done?
that was like a little kid, like, putting a bag over their head or something.
Oh, before that, the other pictures where she's just basically like receding into the wall, like Homer Simpson into the
Oh my
bushes. It
god.
was
Yeah,
so
that was
painful.
so funny. But, I mean, she's in a spot because a lot of her, um, voters in Michigan, like, are worried about the things Trump is saying he's gonna help on, but we'll see. But, yeah, because I had thought Gretchen Whitmer and Josh Shapiro would be a very strong ticket, but,
Right.
that image, I think, will haunt her the way Elon with the chainsaw will haunt him, you know?
Yeah, I think she's cooked. I wanted to ask you about the book again. So you do have a lot of notorious figures, but Trump is very notorious himself. Why did you leave him out of the book?
I think he's an offstage figure.
Okay.
Because this book wasn't supposed to be about politics, but because I did a lot of the interviews during his first term, people are obsessing on him. Like Larry David
Mm.
is upset, and Jane Fonda. They're all, Jane Fonda had some crazy scheme where she wanted to get a bunch of attractive women and
Yeah,
send
the
them to
Charlize
Trump to
Theron.
talk about the environment, like environmental babes or something. So, Trump likes it when all of us are obsessing on him
Mm.
constantly, and I think a lot of people in the book are obsessing on Trump, so he's very much in the book, and, Elon didn't like Trump at this point when I interviewed him, but in the Peter Thiel essay, I think it's very interesting because he predicts that Trump and Elon will be drawn together because he said they're both master chess salesmen, prodigies,
Mm.
of salesmanship and marketing. And when I reported on Elon, a lot of people in Silicon Valley were suspicious of him because they thought he used this kind of Armageddon style marketing of AI coming to get us and they were going to kill us as a way to draw engineers, the best engineers, that if it was very dramatic, I'm saving the world, he could
Sounds like
get
someone
better
I know.
engineers. Yeah, yeah. So then also, Peter Thiel said they were both larger than life, and he correctly predicted they would eventually get together. But there are two great Elon stories in the Peter Thiel essay where he talks about their early days at PayPal. They founded PayPal together. And he says there was a weekly PayPal poker game. And so Elon comes one night and gets in the poker game and he bets everything on every hand. And afterwards, Peter goes, what were you doing? And Elon says, well, I don't know how to play poker. And that reminds me a lot of Doge in Washington. And
Yeah.
then Peter also said he had a new McLaren sports car, so new that he hadn't insured it. And Elon
Mm.
jumps in one day and he goes, "Come on, I want to drive. Let's take it for a drive." And Peter says immediately the car like lifted off and did a 360-degree
Whoa.
turn, and that it
Yeah.
was just a miracle that they lived
Wow.
through it. And again, that's very kind of indicative of like his persona in Washington. It feels like we have been in a 360-degree turn with no seatbelts and no insurance.
Is it forever changed? Can it ever be put back
Washington,
together?
I'm
Yeah.
not sure how they can put all that back together again. I mean that whole soft power stuff took decades and decades to build up. I don't know
Right.
if you opened USAID again, can you get back to where you were? I mean, I just think it's Washington has been so stable for so long that I think it's going to be hard, even if someone else came in, to restore things exactly to where they were. But certainly they could be restored to a certain extent. But I think even Democrats want, a lot of them want, maybe not Bernie, but some of them want a leaner government. I
Right.
mean, I would like that, but not in this crazy, capricious, cruel way that they're going, and self-destructive. I mean,
Right.
they get rid of the nuclear safety people, and then the next day they're like, "Oh, oops." I mean, the whole thing
Yeah.
is, "Oops, I did it again."
The bird flu people, oops,
Yeah, yeah,
no big deal.
it's like the oops administration with the tariffs too. It's like, "Oops, maybe that wasn't right. Maybe
I
we
know. I have
added it
sources
up
that are
wrong."
waiting to get a call saying, like, you're going back to that agency, you're going back here because they're going to realize that they actually had a job and that
Yeah,
they didn't actually have a plan to
yes,
replace the people that they fired. Uh,
yes.
is there any department or agency, though, that you thought maybe it's fine that it's gone and didn't really need to be there anyway?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I would have to study it. I do think, but as everyone says, and as you said, these aren't where you really have to make the cuts anyway? I mean,
Hmm.
isn't like 98% of it in Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and stuff? I don't know how much money they can save anyway.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to pull off those tax cuts. Like you said, the math doesn't exactly add up without going into
No,
entitlements.
this whole thing has made me feel a lot better about being bad at math because it's like nobody else in Washington can do math anymore either.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be a hard sell. So we'll see if they can actually pull that off. I have a
And
selfish question.
I know you know Sean McCreesh, when he was my researcher, we were so scared that we were going to get numbers wrong because neither of us could do math, that usually we would change any number to be like a lot of people. We, we would just take the number out. But now the whole city is bad at math.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm terrible at math too. I don't think you can have both parts of your brain working. It's just not,
No, definitely
there are no
not.
perfect humans out there.
No, no.
So I have a selfish question. What's your writing process like?
Oh, it's just pure fear and adrenaline. When I was writing in New York, I would actually have to wait till I heard, back in the day of delivery trucks, I would have to hear the delivery trucks running before I would get scared enough to start
Stop.
writing. Yeah, I mean, because most of the day I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, how did they ever make me a New York Times columnist?"
Oh my God.
Then it's like 5 o'clock, and I have to think, "Oh yeah, maybe I should try and write something." But I'm always amazed at my office husband is Tom Friedman, and he writes like so easily. I mean, he just has a thought and it just comes out and it comes onto the computer and then it goes in the paper. And I'm just in awe of people who can do that, because mine is just, I'm a grinder, I'm grinding it out.
So when is the latest that you can hand in your Sunday column?
Oh, it has to be in by let's see, they won it by like 7:30 Friday nights. And
When's the
Trump,
latest Maureen Dowd can hand in her column?
yeah,
You must
that's
have a
the
little
latest.
bit of.
No, I would
Oh,
like to
really?
think so, but no. But yeah. Actually they probably won it by 6:30, honestly. But
Hmm.
the Trump is like he giveth and he taketh away, because on the one hand, you can always count
Hmm.
on him to come up with a couple amazing crazy stories on a Friday. But
Totally.
then on the other hand, it's like the story will kind of spill over, and it's happening Friday night. Like
Hmm.
no other president is making
Right.
news, Friday night and all weekend. And then he can do something that totally changes the story that you've already written. So he does generate a lot of news, but then he keeps generating. So he might negate, like he might go back on all the tariffs. So it's
Hmm.
hard to know if he's going to, reverse things or change things or ratchet things up.
Yeah, he's not exactly made for print.
No.
He works for the Twitterverse that he's created.
Has he ever tweeted about you?
Yeah, he has actually.
What did he
But
say?
oh, he said something like, I reported something this summer about how he wanted to sue David Muir. Um, I can't remember over what, but he was on his like I'm suing CBS spree, and the latest one was that he was telling people he was going to sue David Muir, and I wrote something about it, how he's been ranting about it, in addition to ranting about a bunch of other things, and he was like, this Tara Palmeri, who I don't know, but if I did know, or like something like along those lines. And she says that I'm going to sue David Muir, but I would sue David Muir if I had the time, but I have too much winning, or something along those lines. So much
Well, that's
winning.
not
No,
too bad. He called me a wacky, neurotic dope. So you need
yeah,
to work harder, Tara. You've got to
I
get,
know, I do, I know. A
got to get
columnist, like,
more out of him.
I know, I need to get in front of his face.
Yeah, you need a
What
nickname.
I know, I need one. But his people are pretty horrible though. His war room for a while was pretty much after me every single day. Um, Worst reporter in the world or something like that. I don't know. I was like, I'm happy to be the best at something. But like they were very aggressive with me. But
No, I
the funny
mean
thing is,
today, yeah, today he was Caitlin Collins was in the Oval Office and was asking questions, and he goes, CNN does not love America. I mean, what does that even mean? That
yeah,
is, it's, if he said something like that to me about me, I mean, my father was in World War I, my brothers were in the
right.
Coast Guard, they served,
Mm,
my father was a police officer, as you said. I mean, if Trump said something like, you don't love America, I just think that is so low, such a
yeah.
low, false, stupid thing to say in the Oval Office to a reporter.
Yeah, no, it's like it's crazy. And yeah, especially Caitlyn. I mean, I think she's really been fair and balanced, and she's taken a lot of hits on both sides, and she's
I know.
been like,
Caitlin, she looks uh, like a cover girl for the American dream.
yeah,
She's like Alabama and she loves football and she's
right,
like an
totally.
all-American girl who does obviously really love America. And for him to just toss that kind of thing out in the Oval Office is so
Yeah,
heinous and offensive.
yeah. I She's unflappable though. I'm always amazed at how she keeps a
Yes.
straight face the whole time.
I
I think
know, I love that.
I'd
Like
be like,
she
wait,
and
what?
yeah, she and Maggie Haberman, they
I
just keep
know.
coming. There's nothing he can do. They are just gonna keep coming for him. I love that.
I don't people have asked me too that aren't in the world, like, how do you handle that? Like when Trump's team was like particularly aggressive towards me, like just every day, something
Ugh,
I couldn't even
it can
tweet
be
without
so
it. And
loathsome.
yeah, the things they were saying were really gross too. And they're like, how does it like I was like, of course it like impacts you, but then at some point you're just like, this is not about you. Like
Yeah.
you have to separate yourself from it. I do think part of the reason too why like my work in like podcasting and in social media hasn't really hit Trump yet is because he's old school. Like actually I called him like a few months ago and we spoke and I told him, I'm in new media, I'm going to go independent, this and that. And he was like, he knew me from the New York Post when I worked there at Page Six, and from ABC News when I was on, World News Tonight. But once you go into the sort of like podcast new media sphere, he doesn't know that. He doesn't.
I know,
He
it's so
doesn't really.
funny because I love that, Maggie and was Jonathan on that story, the human printer,
Yeah.
the very attractive young lady who follows him
Yes.
around and prints out positive stories about him because he can't check his phone. And this is the
No.
irony of Trump. So this soon to be 79-year-old president, has let all the tech gods buy into the government. And so he is concerned with things and to make money himself, like the memes, the and Bitcoin
Crypto.
and all these
Yeah.
these things that Biden had never heard of. And so it's weird. He's like both super old school with the human printer, and he
He's
still has his
retro.
gold Sharpie. And then so she'll print something out, and then if he likes it, he'll write on the gold Sharpie and they'll mail it to a reporter.
So
It's
crazy.
crazy old school, but on the other hand, he's doing all this kind of newfangled stuff too.
Well, it was his family that really got him into it. The boys got him into crypto. Barron got him into the podcast, which was smart. Take over the whole MAGA sphere, the whole bro culture, which was pissed off about cancel culture.
Yeah.
So he utilized it. He's certainly interested in it, but at the end of the day, this is a guy who reads his New York Times, who reads his New York Post, who reads the Wall Street Journal, and is watching TV all day long. He's
Right. I mean,
still
that's the funny thing about how he's so demeaning to the press because we are his oxygen. He's an
He's
attention
yes.
addict. I always think of him as like having like a heroin addict with a needle coming out of his arm because he has to have all the attention in the
It's
world in a
so
way he does. But we are the vehicle for him to breathe and get oxygen. So when he demeans us or diminishes us, it's meaningless because we're the drug dealer. We're the ones giving
I
him
know.
what he wants.
So true. It's a very apt comparison to a heroin addict because he would have a reporter in the Oval Office probably before a state leader, like a
Oh,
national leader. Hands down.
absolutely. That's
Right.
everything to him. And also, his father loved the New York Times. And I always find, like with Bush Sr., when their father loved the New York Times, then they love it. And he can say whatever he wants about the failing New York Times, but he's obsessed with the New York Times. He's obsessed with Maggie. Bob
Yes.
Woodward said to me once, I saw him at the premiere of the movie, Oliver Stone movie, Nixon, and he said about himself, like every president gets the psychoanalyst he deserves. And he was saying at that point, like he had been Nixon's and I was Bill Clinton's, but certainly Maggie is Trump's.
Okay. So now that I've got you on Bill Clinton, line from Jane Austen or Shakespeare on Bill Clinton.
Love, love Slavers Lost.
Okay. Barack Obama.
Mm, it is a truth universally acknowledged. But I did see one that applied to Trump. Yeah, it's from Claudius and Hamlet. Madness in great ones must not unwatched go.
Wow. That is
There you
interesting. That
go.
is that.
There you go,
I think we're gonna.
President Trump.
I just got the chills. Okay.
And I just saw Denzel Washington's Othello, so I should have some at top of mind. But yeah.
I'll have to have you back on again then.
Okay, thank you, Tara. So you are so
Always a
talented
pleasure.
and charming. I'm always
Oh, thank
happy to
you.
see you anywhere.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment coming from you. And I continue to be your biggest fan. So
All
thanks
right.
for
And
coming on.
thanks for coming to the party.
Yeah. And of course, buy Maureen's book,
Oh, yeah.
Notorious. It's really
Notorious.
great.
It's
I've been
fun.
reading it all weekend.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's good for
And
a
you can
plane
hop
or the
around.
pool. Yeah, you can hop
Yeah.
around. What's
Yeah. If
better
you're
than
interested in
that?
one person, you can move on to the next one. So
Yeah,
many
that's
lessons.
what somebody said. Well, I don't like Jane Fonda. I said, that's fine. Move on to Candace Bergen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Tara.
If you like this show, please hit the subscribe button and share this page with your friends. To support my independent journalism, please consider becoming a paid subscriber to my newsletter, The Red Letter, where you'll get all my exclusive accountability journalism first. You can find it in this description page or by going to tarapalmeri.com.